Ye Panchakalpa Tarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhyeva cha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Welcome, everyone. Thanks for attending Bhagavad-gita class at Rupanuga Vedic College. We will begin by reciting the Roman transliteration. We'll start with chapter 14, text 17. Satvat sanjayate jnanam rajaso lobha evacha pramada moha tamaso bhavato jnanam evacha. Translation. From the mode of goodness, real knowledge develops. From the mode of passion, grief develops. And from the mode of ignorance, foolishness, madness, and illusion develop. Text 18. Urdhvam gachanti sattvasa majje tishtanti rajasaha jaganya guna vrittisa ado gachanti tamasaha. Translation. Those situated in the mode of goodness gradually go upward to the higher planets. Those in the mode of passion live on the earthly planets, and those in the mode of ignorance go down to the hellish worlds. Text 19. Nanyam gunebhya kartaram yada drashta nupashyati gunebhyascha param veti madbhavam so digachyati. When you see that there is nothing beyond these modes of nature in all activities, and that the Supreme Lord is transcendental to all these modes, then you can know my spiritual nature. You could turn it off. Thank you. Text 20. Gunan etan atitya trin dehi deha samudbhavan janma mrityu jara dugair vimukto mrityam ashnute. When the embodied being is able to transcend these three modes, he can become free from birth, death, old age, and their distresses, and can enjoy nectar even in this life. Text 21. Arjuna uvacha karlingai strin gunan etan etito bhavati prabho kim acha katam chaikams strin gunan ativartate. Translation. Arjuna inquired, "O my dear Lord, by what symptoms is one known who is transcendental to those modes? What is his behavior, and how does he transcend the modes of nature?" Text 22 through 25. Sama dukkha sukha swast. Wait, is that the right one? Sorry. Shri Bhagavan uvacha prakasham cha pavrittim cha moham eva cha pandava na dveshti samparitani na nirvatani kankshati udasina vad asino gunayo na vichalati gunavartya ityevam yo vitishati ningate. Sama dukkha sukha swashta sama loshashma kanchanaha tulya priya priyo dhiras tulya nindatma samstutahi mana pamanayos tulyas tulyo mitrari pakshayo sarvaramba parityagi gunatita sa uchate. Translation. The Blessed Lord said, "He who does not hate illumination, attachment, and delusion when they are present, nor longs for them when they disappear, who is seated like one unconcerned, being situated beyond these material reactions of the modes of nature, who remains firm, knowing that the modes alone are active, who regards alike pleasure and pain, and looks on a clod, a stone, and a piece of gold with an equal eye, who is wise and holds praise and blame to be the same, who is unchanged in honor and dishonor, who treats friend and foe alike, who has abandoned all fruitive undertakings. Such a man is said to have transcended the modes of nature. Text 26. Mamcha yovya picharina bhakti yogena sevate sagunam samatityaitan brahma bhuyaya kalpate. One who engages in full devotional service, who does not fall down in any circumstance, at once transcends the modes of material nature, and thus comes to the level of Brahman. Text 27, last text of the chapter also. Brahmano hi pratishtaham amritasya vyasya cha shashvatasya cha dharmasya sukasya kantikasya cha. Translation. And I am the basis of the impersonal Brahman, which is the constitutional position of ultimate happiness, and which is immortal, imperishable, and eternal. So we'll go back to text 17. From the mode of goodness, real knowledge develops. From the mode of passion, grief develops. And from the mode of ignorance, foolishness, madness, and illusion develop. Purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada ki. Yes. Since the present civilization is not very congenial to the living entities, Krishna consciousness is recommended. Through Krishna consciousness, society will develop the mode of goodness. When the mode of goodness is developed, people will see things as they are. In the mode of ignorance, people are just like animals and cannot see things clearly. In the mode of ignorance, for example, they do not see that by killing one animal, they are taking a chance of being killed by the same animal in the next life. Because people have no education and actual knowledge, they become irresponsible. To stop this irresponsibility, education for developing the mode of goodness of the people in general must be there. When they're actually educated in the mode of goodness, they will become sober, in full knowledge of things as they are. Then people will be happy and prosperous. Even if the majority of the people aren't happy and prosperous, if a certain percentage of the population develops Krishna consciousness and becomes situated in the mode of goodness, then there is the possibility for peace and prosperity all over the world. Otherwise, if the world is devoted to the modes of passion and ignorance, there can be no peace or prosperity. In the mode of passion, people become greedy, and their hankering for sense enjoyment has no limit. One can see that even if one has enough money and adequate arrangement for sense gratification, there is neither happiness nor peace of mind. That is not possible because one is situated in the mode of passion. If one wants happiness at all, his money will not help him. He has to elevate himself to the mode of goodness by practicing Krishna consciousness. One engaged in the mode of passion is not only mentally unhappy, but his profession and occupation are also very troublesome. He has to devise so many plans and schemes to acquire enough money to maintain his status quo. This is all miserable. In the mode of ignorance, people become mad. Being distressed by their circumstances, they take shelter of intoxication, and thus they sink further into ignorance. Their future in life is very dark. Maharaj, would you like to?
I'd like to make a comment about the last verse of the chapter. That's an important verse, and it's 27. The question sometimes comes up, why is the impersonal Brahman constitutional position of ultimate happiness, which is immortal, imperishable, and eternal? Because it is a person who is fixed in the Brahman conception, even though he hasn't understood the personal and localized aspects of the absolute truth, he has realized the eternal feature, and he's no longer acting in the modes of karma. He's not, his activities are not going to bring future activities because they're not material. He doesn't know how to act, so there's a danger that he will act materially, but at least in principle, because he's understood himself to be Brahman, and he's not striving to get some material fruit of results. And the problem is, of course, he's trying to become God in an indirect way. So that is a problem. But still, the Brahman conception is considered transcendental. The learned transcendentalists who know the absolute truth, Vedanti Tattva Vidas Sadvam, Yajganam Brahmeti Paramatmeti Bhagavaniti Shabdate. They call this non-dual substance Brahman, Paramama, and Bhagavan. So it is transcendental. And one who attained that, Lord Chaitanya said that one jnani, one impersonalist like that, is worth koti, 10 million karma. So he's rarer than 10 million karmis, one jnani. And we know that jnana is not the ultimate jnana, but it's a step in the right direction. He's progressing. And that's why it is the constitutional position there is of the soul. Whereas in the material world, they're thinking that if you ask the big philosophers, they'll say, we're just these bodies. We're made of matter. We're made of cells or whatever they may call it. But still, it's material. It's temporary. They cannot account for what is that eternal immortal soul. But that is Brahman. And that is the first stage in self-realization. And then we know there's two more stages. So I just wanted to clarify that.
Thank you for those nice comments. When one is situated on the platform of Brahma, Brahma-bhuta prasanatmana shachatina kankshati, he desires nor laments to have anything. But from that platform, one goes to Bhakchamama Vijananti Avanyas Tatpataha Tato Mam Tatpato Gatva Vishate Tadanantaram. So one goes from there, from the Brahma-bhuta stage, to serving the Supreme Lord. And that's the only way that he's going to enter into the kingdom of God, is if he serves the Supreme Lord. Else he's just going to merge for a while in the impersonal Brahman, so-called merging. He's still going to keep his individuality, but he again will fall down because there's no bliss in that. There's some happiness, but there's no bliss. The only way we get bliss is if we have a reciprocal relationship with the Lord. That's where the bliss comes in. So we should try to avoid that snare of Maya, to think that merging is the end all in all of practicing the teachings from the Vedas, because it's not. The end is actually Krishna consciousness, to be in pure devotional, and to be in pure devotion to Krishna, not tinged with any fruit of activity, mental speculation, or sense gratification. Okay, so we'll go back to 17. So we hear from Prabhupada that in the mode of ignorance, people are just like animals and cannot see things clearly. They cannot see, what they cannot see clearly is they're not the body. If they knew they were not the body, they wouldn't be engaging in so much activity that is entangling. They don't know what entangling means. They don't know that their activity has a reaction. A common example of this is someone who is speeding on the highway and they are unaware of the speed limit, and they get pulled over by a police officer, and the police officer tells them, "You're speeding." And the person's like, "Oh, I didn't know I was speeding. That maybe you should let me off." And the police officer's like, "No, you were going like 95 miles an hour in a 65. Like that's 30 miles over the speed limit. So I have to give you a ticket by the law. It says in the law." So even though that person who was speeding 30 miles over the speed limit was ignorant of the actual speed limit, they still receive a reaction for that. And that, in this example, they'll receive a ticket and some fine and might have to appear in court and plead guilty and so on. So it's a big hassle. So even though someone might not know that killing an animal leads to being killed as an animal, they're still liable to that. And unfortunately, in the United States, there's a lot of animal killing going on. So there's a lot of sinful reactions being handed out by the laws of material nature. Of course, there is some license in the Vedas to partake in animal flesh, but in that process, which is probably not happening correctly anywhere on this earth planet, the priest before the priest kills that animal, they whisper into the ear, "I'm killing you now, but later you will be killing me." So they're aware of this reaction. Even though it's allowed in the Vedas, they're aware that they're going to receive that reaction for their activity. But that's in the mode of ignorance. So if we give those who are in the mode of ignorance actual education about the fact that they're not their body, that they're spirit soul, then they might have the possibility to overcome their bad habits. But of course, to really overcome them, to really make that true effort, they have to learn how. And the process in the Vedas is, for this age of Kali, of quarrel and hypocrisy, is chanting of the Maha Mantra. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. And we invite all those who have some sort of interest to come, and we can teach them how to chant the Maha Mantra. We're not sectarian. We're not saying you have to give up some other practice that you're following. We're not saying if you're a follower of Christ and you want to keep following Christ, that's okay. But we also recommend, not we, but the Vedas recommend, to chant Hare Krishna, because in the Vedas it said that's the only way. Kalo nastyeva 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 gatir anyata. It's the only way. There's no other way. There's no other way. There's no other way. So armed with that knowledge, we can inform those that if you really want to see results in your spiritual practice, maybe try doing this. And if you don't, that's okay. You can still come and take prasadam with us. You can still come associate with us. We'd love to have everyone here, because that just increases the nectar and the bliss for the person coming, and also for us. It gives the devotees great joy when someone else joins. It enlivens us. It in some way confirms our practice also, even though we might not need that, but maybe in the neophyte stage, we need to see that others are also interested in this, and it's not so foreign. Because us practicing this in our culture today is quite foreign. This Vaishnava etiquette is essential, but to some it's quite foreign. And so we tolerate others' actions, and we also tolerate our minds. Prabhupada also goes on to explain that in the mode of passion, people become greedy and their hankering for sense enjoyment has no limit. So has anyone in here got a mosquito bite before? Has anyone scratched it? What happens when you scratch it?
It's worse.
It gets better. Oh, okay. Well, maybe we can talk about chicker bites then. Yeah, those are pretty intense, right? We scratch it and it gets worse. So the scratching, it doesn't lessen the itch that we have. In one of the classes that I was taking, psychology, the professor was saying that a way to quit a bad habit is to just stop. We just have to decide, I don't want to do this anymore. We have to make that firm commitment. We have to draw the line in the sand between us and that bad habit and not step over that line. But of course, we're very fortunate here because we're able to get a higher taste. Param dristva nivarta taste. So even though we have some attachment to that, to those sense enjoyments, we can use our knowledge to understand that's not going to help me. That's not going to help me progress in my practice. So we draw that sand in the line between that habit that's been really bothering us, and we don't cross it. We try really hard. And with the association of devotees, and even if we do cross that line, we just get up, pat ourselves on the back and keep going because we know eventually we will give it up because we've given up so many things already in our practice of Krishna consciousness. One of the big things mentioned in this purport is animal killing. We've given that up. And of course, here at the temple, all the devotees are very fortunate here. We're one out of millions and millions of persons on this planet that has the fortune to be here at Rupanuga Vedic College and partake in practicing Krishna conscious sincerely, strictly, and seriously. And we can relish that together so nicely. Singing all together in the temple room, especially in the morning during Mangalarti, a very auspicious Mangala auspicious time during the day. You can see all the devotees dancing so nicely. It's relishable. Text 18. Those situated in the mode of goodness gradually go upward to the higher planets. Those in the mode of passion live on the earthly planets, and those in the mode of ignorance go down to the hellish worlds. So this is a description. I'll read the purport. In this verse, the results of actions in the three modes of nature are more explicitly set forth. There is an upper planetary system consisting of the heavenly planets where everyone is highly elevated. According to the degree of development of the mode of goodness, the living entity can be transferred to various planets in this system. The highest planet is Satyaloka or Brahmaloka, where the prime person of this universe, Lord Brahma, resides. We have seen already that we can hardly calculate the wondrous condition of life in Brahmaloka, but the highest condition of life, the mode of goodness, can bring us to this. The mode of passion is mixed. It is in the middle between the modes of goodness and ignorance. A person is not always pure, but even if he should be purely in the mode of passion, he will simply remain on this earth as a king or a rich man. But because there are mixtures, one can also go down. People on this earth in the modes of passion or ignorance cannot forcibly approach the higher planets by machine. In the mode of passion, there is also the chance of becoming mad in the next life. The lowest quality, the mode of ignorance, is described here as abominable. The result of developing ignorance is very, very risky. It is the lowest quality in material nature. Beneath the human level, there are 8 million species of life, birds, beasts, reptiles, trees, and so on. And according to the development of the modes of ignorance, people are brought down to these abominable conditions. The word tamasaha is very significant here. Tamasaha indicates those who stay continually in the mode of ignorance without rising to a higher mode. Their future is very dark. There is opportunity for men in the modes of ignorance and passion to be elevated to the mode of goodness, and that system is called Krishna consciousness. One who does not take advantage of this opportunity certainly will continue to in the lower modes. We have a grand opportunity to help those come out of the modes of material nature. Prabhupada describes that their future is very dark if they don't come out of these modes of material nature. So by all of our services here, either maintaining the temple so those who are interested to come can, and by distributing books, Srila Prabhupada's books, we can enlighten those who are maybe hovering on this platform in the mode of passion or the mixed modes of passion and ignorance, so they can come out of it and really see the truth of things. Text 19. When you see that there is nothing beyond these modes of nature in all activities, and that the Supreme Lord is transcendent to all these modes, then you can know my spiritual nature. One can transcend all the activities of the modes of material nature simply by understanding them properly, by learning from the proper souls. The real spiritual master is Krishna, and he is imparting the spiritual knowledge to Arjuna. Similarly, it is from those who are fully in Krishna consciousness that one has to learn the science of activities in terms of the modes of nature. Otherwise, one's life will be misdirected. By the instruction of a bona fide spiritual master, a living entity can know of his spiritual position, his material body, his senses, how he is entrapped, and how he is under the spell of the material modes of nature. He is helpless being in the grip of these modes, but when he can see his real position, then he can attain to the transcendental platform, having the scope for spiritual life. Actually, the living entity is not the performer of different activities. He is forced to act because he is situated in a particular type of body, conducted by some particular mode of material nature. Unless one has the help of spiritual authority, he cannot understand in what position he is actually situated. With the association of a bona fide spiritual master, he can see his real position, and by such an understanding, he can become fixed in full Krishna consciousness. A man in Krishna consciousness is not controlled by the spell of the material modes of nature. It has already been stated in the 7th chapter that one who has surrendered to Krishna is relieved from the activities of material nature. Therefore, one who is able to see things as they are, the influence of material nature gradually decreases. So we're in these material modes of nature. Well, I'm in these material modes of nature, and sometimes I get a glimpse of the mode of goodness. And so if we're in these modes of material nature, we have imperfect knowledge. We're plagued by the 4 defects. Our senses are imperfect. We're liable to make mistakes. We fall into illusion or thinking that we're this body. And we have the propensity to cheat. So the only way to get out of this is to contact someone who is not in it. And that's a spiritual master. That's the pure devotees. Lord Chaitanya, in his instructions to Sanatana Goswami, he really stresses the need to associate with pure devotees. So as followers of Lord Chaitanya, we hear that instruction and we strive to associate with those pure devotees, those that are completely and fully engaged in Krishna consciousness all the time. And that way, they don't have contamination from the material modes of nature. They're able to see things clearly. And to help myself and others to see things clearly. Text 20. When the embodied being is able to transcend these three modes, he can become free from birth, death, old age, and their distresses, and can enjoy nectar even in this life. Purport. How one can stay in the transcendental position, even in this body, in full Krishna consciousness, is explained in this verse. The Sanskrit word dehi means embodied. Although one is within this material body, by his advancement in spiritual knowledge, he can be free from the influence of the modes of nature. He can enjoy the happiness of spiritual life even in this body because, after leaving this body, he is certainly going to the spiritual sky. But even in this body, he can enjoy spiritual happiness. In other words, devotional service in Krishna consciousness. It is the sign of liberation from this material entanglement. And this will be explained in the 18th chapter. When one is freed from the influence of the modes of material nature, he enters into devotional service. So we can get out of these modes of material nature. And the way to do that is to follow the instruction of the spiritual master. And those instructions, they lead us to understand that Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu Smaranam, practicing these three methods of devotional service, hearing, chanting, and then remembering the Lord, are important. And in that way, we can come to understand the appearance and activities of the Lord. Janma karma chame divyam yo. Janma karma chame divyam etam yo viti tatvata chaktya deham punarjanmam naiti mameti sarjuna. We can understand, if we understand the activities of Krishna and his appearance, then there's no possibility of us staying here in this material world. And if we keep that consciousness, that Krishna consciousness, then we'll be able to enjoy nectar even in this life. It's not such a pie in the sky thing that's happening here. We have the process so nicely described to us. You associate with devotees, you get little faith from the devotees, and you associate with them, then you get devotional service. So one step at a time we take, and we can see how it's changing our lives. And so when it's said that we can rise above we can be free from the birth, death, and old age, then we can understand that that's true. If we understand that one step's true, that one thing we can understand, then we can go to the next level and the next level, and it gets deeper and deeper. And the mystery becomes, it's no more. It stops being a mystery because we start to understand. That's why this process, the science of self-realization, we're realizing who we really are, and we're realizing the relationship we have with Krishna, and we're realizing the other relationships that we have with all the other jivatmas out there. So that's the only way it's going to happen. Someone might tell us this, but if we don't realize it, then it will be difficult for us to progress in spiritual life. So Arjuna is in asking, okay, well, if someone can transcend those material modes of nature, what's that actually look like? What does this person do? And then we understand in the next text that this person does not hate illumination, attachment, delusion when they are present. So he's situated on a plane where he's not disturbed by being in knowledge or being attached or in delusion. He's situated. He's unconcerned. He remains firm in Krishna consciousness. And he knows that even if something adverse happens, it's just the material modes of nature acting out. And he can become equipoised in that. And even if there's happiness, distress, pain or pleasure, he knows that it's just, okay, I'll have pleasure or pain now, or I'll have pleasure now and I'll get pain later. It's just the reality of us being in this material world. But someone who realizes, okay, that's going to happen, and then that later is going to happen, they won't be disturbed by that. So in text 26, one who engages in full devotional service, who does not fall down in any circumstance, at once transcends the modes of material nature and thus comes to the level of Brahman. So we get an answer to Arjuna's question, what to do, and that's, we have to engage in devotional service. Okay, that's all I have now, devotees. Is there any questions, comments, chastisements? Yes, Prabhu? Krishnendu?
Hare Krishna. I like this point you were talking about. You were hearing from your psychology teacher. What's the difference? Oh, okay. Anyways, they said to quit a bad habit, you just have to stop. And, that seems really hard, especially like you mentioned, Prabhupada is packaging this whole Krishna consciousness in a way that's nice, it's palatable, so we can get that higher taste, and eventually you see that all the other things are nonsense and miserable, actually. But I was thinking of this in terms of, people who have problems, especially with addiction, say they can't give up the addiction until they hit rock bottom. Until their misery, their pain, until they really come face to face that, like, I have no control, that, this thing that I'm attached to is ruining my life. And sometimes people hit that point and then they go back and then they have to hit a lower point, or so on and so forth. The reason why I mention this is because Prabhupada, he often mentions that, to take up spiritual life, we have to realize the futility of material life. You realize that there is no happiness here, that it is only pain, that it is only suffering, or, at best, it is only temporary. So it's just an interesting parallel that I noticed there. So we kind of have to hit rock bottom with material life, and we keep holding on to attachments, and Krishna keeps putting us in different situations to show us, you sure you want to hold on to these things? They're not so good.
That's really nice comments. And I'm sure all of us have experiences of what rock bottom is, and of course it's different for every person, that have kind of led us here, or at least we can introspect to understand what maybe that rock bottom was. But for some, like addiction, the current thought on that, at least in the secular scientific world, is that it's a disease. The brain just gets so used to it. It gets just so stuck in a rut that it can't imagine being without it. And of course, it can be fatal for those too, especially I'm thinking of alcoholics. If they just stop drinking cold turkey, they can actually die because their chemistry in their body becomes such a certain way that it demands alcohol. So of course, there's special situations for anything, time, place, and circumstance demands our intelligence to see how to overcome certain matters. And of course, it's also suggested for some activities to regulate, like regulating, eating, sleeping, recreation. Those are all things we can learn to regulate. And in time, we can come to a level where that's not disturbing us, because our main thing is to practice devotional service. And so anything that can disturb that is an impediment. So we're always searching for what the most impeding thing is in our life. Of course, as devotees, we're introspective. We want to find out what those, we call them anarthas, are in our life, and get rid of them, or at least learn to recognize that they're a bad dog, you could say, and they need to be quiet. You need to tell them, please be quiet, bad dog, stop barking. And in that way we can quiet them. And a lot of times the bad dog's the mind. The mind wants to go this place and that place and this place and that place. And we learn in the Bhagavad-gita, Dhyayato vishayam pungsang sangas teshu pajayate sangat sanjayate kama kama karota vijayate. That while contemplating the objects of the senses, we develop attachment to them. And from attachment, lust develops. And from lust, anger arises. And eventually, that anger can lead us to forgetting that we're actually spirit, soul, and not the body. We're actually the spirit, soul, and we're not the body. So we should understand that contemplation of material enjoyment, what it can lead to. And with that intelligence, we can tell our minds to just, be quiet, just calm down. That's the best kind of procrastination we can do. We can procrastinate those things that aren't serving us. Like, oh yeah, we'll think about that later, mind. We don't have to do that now. So in that way, we can engage procrastination. So the more yes, Radhastelli? No, it's fine. Comment, question, you got it.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
On this conversation of relieving ourselves of our bad habits, I was thinking of a lecture that I was listening to by S.B. Kesava Swami or Maharaj on overcoming mediocrity. And he was speaking about rising from the lower modes to at least the mode of goodness, or becoming more pure. And so he was speaking about how we need to increase our intensity in our services. And to do that, to increase our intensity in our services, we can, I'm forgetting, accept more services, be more attentive to how we're offering our services, like the quality of our services, the quality of our chanting, everything that we do for Krishna. We just increase the intensity of it. And so he offered a few different points. I highly recommend everyone listen to that lecture also. It's very nice. But I was just thinking that it's possible for us to be raised to the mode of goodness, at least, and then later transcend. He shared this story of how a disciple was watching how all the devotees were bowing down to Srila Prabhupada. And he approached Prabhupada and said, wow, they're all bowing to you. And He says, yes, because they all know that I have no lust. And then he went back later and he said, Prabhupada said to the same disciple, actually, it's not that I do not have lust. It's that I don't make time for lust. So if we can learn to not allow any space or time for those bad habits and replace it, like you said, from just vivartate. Did I say that right? Seek the higher taste, which Prabhupada has given us, then we won't have space for those other habits. Anyway, sorry, I just thought I'd share that comment.
Thank you for your nice comments. Yes, we should go from we should try our best, we should understand where we're at, and always strive to improve our practice. And the way to know how to do that is to inquire from someone who's practicing nicely. So if we have a doubt, we can ask Magadari. And in Christian Hindu. And His Holiness Dhanavir Goswami. Thank you so much for allowing me to speak tonight. Please forgive me of any offenses. Vanchakalpa tribhyascha kripa sindhubhyevacha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha.